Tonight, breaking news. We're on the scene of this horrific mass shooting. The urgent manhunt at this hour here in Maine. The suspected gunman, an Army reservist, now wanted in the deadliest mass shooting in the U.S. this year. Tonight, the suspect, Robert Card, accused of killing at least 18 people and wounding more than a dozen others, several of them critically. Tonight, authorities warning he is armed and dangerous. The chilling surveillance images showing him walking into a bowling alley carrying what appears to be an AR-15 style rifle, aiming his weapon. Witnesses say he opened fire with a youth bowling league underway. 12 minutes later, the 911 calls from a second location. Tonight, police now searching on the ground and in the air, where authorities have found his car, the note found in his home, the retired nurse who was shot, and the doctor she used to work with who then operated on her, what she told us from her hospital bed today, and the husband who was shot and killed, the family that waited 14 hours for the horrible news. My interview tonight with his heartbroken father, what authorities told him his son tried to do, and the images just coming in tonight, authorities on the scene right now of a home in Bowdoin, Maine, associated with the suspect. Wick Johnson standing by with late reporting on the search. Also tonight, here are the warning signs. The alleged gunman spending 2 weeks at a mental health facility just this past July, after sources say he reported hearing voices and threatened to shoot up a National Guard facility. Pierre Thomas on that part of the story. The names and the faces of the victims now emerging here. The youth bowling coach, a loving husband and grandfather who tried to protect the children. The mother working part-time at the bowling alley. The cousin who witnessed it all. Linsey Davis with their stories. The other major news tonight, Israel's war with Hamas, and tonight Israeli tanks entering Gaza. What does this signal? Matt Gutman on the ground tonight. The alarming images this evening, the U.S. military accusing a Chinese fighter jet of nearly colliding with an American B-52 bomber. They say it came within 10 feet. Tonight, the intruder inside the home of presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy and his wife, actress Cheryl Hines, both home at the time. And the storms we're tracking here tonight, heavy snow nearly 2 feet in some areas. Several states now under winter weather alerts tonight.
From ABC News, this is a special edition of World News Tonight with David Muir, reporting tonight from Lewiston, Maine.
Good evening tonight from Lewiston, Maine, the scene of a horrific mass shooting here. At least 18 dead and at least 13 injured, several of them critically. And tonight, as we come on the air here, there is an urgent manhunt for the suspected gunman. Authorities say a U.S. Army reservist. The shootings at 2 different locations, one of them at a bowling alley right here behind us. Families, children playing in a youth bowling league. 12 minutes later, at a second location, a bar and grill here. And all day today, as we were driving through these communities, reporting on this awful story, the alerts going out on our phones, we all got them. Everyone getting these signals here that the shelter-in-place order has been extended across 2 counties. The gunman considered armed and dangerous, and tonight with nightfall, the eerie quiet here in so many communities. People inside their homes, their doors locked. The horror beginning just before 7 p.m. last night, the calls to 911 reporting an active shooter at the bowling alley here, that youth bowling league well underway. People seen running for their lives in the dark. A short time later, those calls of a second shooting at a restaurant nearby. Multiple law enforcement agencies and emergency medical personnel immediately dispatched to both scenes. And it was not long before authorities released these chilling surveillance images from the bowling alley. The gunman actually seen entering with what appears to be an AR-style weapon. Police warning the public to be on alert. Tonight, the suspect, Robert Card, facing multiple counts of murder. An Army reservist who we have learned went to a mental health facility for 2 weeks just this past July. Tonight, his car has been found at a boat launch in Lisbon, Maine. It's about 8 miles from where we're standing here tonight. The door's still open, the lights still on, and the note they have now found at his home. The manhunt at this hour now involving more than 350 law enforcement personnel from multiple states and from federal agencies, including the FBI. And the reminders are everywhere. We saw the roadblocks here today signaling the continuing danger. Tonight here, the stories from inside the bowling alley and from inside that restaurant and bar, and the family that waited 14 hours for the news. What they told me about their loved one, what their son tried to do. Tonight, the horror that began here just before 7 last night. Tonight, these small New England communities in and around Lewiston, Maine, north of Portland, gripped in fear. Nearly 24 hours later, families are still being told tonight by authorities to stay home and to lock their doors. All day today, we could see the main streets here, the back roads eerily quiet. Public safety alerts going off as we were driving in our car reporting here. Drivers being told the shelter-in-place order has been extended across 2 counties here. Tonight, the urgent manhunt for the suspect who opened fire during the dinner hour last night at 2 different locations where neighbors, where families and their children were gathered. Tonight, the death toll, at least 18 people killed, 13 injured, several critically.
Need you to respond to the town of Lewiston.
The first 911 calls coming in at 6:56 p.m. last night.
Spare time recreation for an active shooter incident, multiple people down.
Parents shielding their children, some running for their lives. It was youth night at the local bowling alley. Just-in-time recreation, it's called, also known here as the Spare Time Bowling Alley. 7 people were killed inside. Authorities say 6 males and 1 female.
Well, we were inside and it's normal night of bowling, and out of nowhere he just came in and there was a loud pop. Thought it was a balloon. I had my back turned to the door, and as soon as I turned and saw it was not a balloon, he was holding a weapon, I just booked it down the lane and I slid basically into where the pins are and climbed up in the machine and was on top of the machines for about 10 minutes until the cops got there.
Megan Hutchinson and her 10-year-old daughter Zoe were inside. They raced to barricade themselves in a storage room.
When I turned around, I saw the shooter right behind me. He had just come in the door. Between the lanes, there's some swinging doors, where they keep all the mechanical stuff out back. So we kind of all just ran that way.
Zoe's leg grazed by a bullet.
I never thought I'd grow up and get a bullet in my leg, and it's just like why? Why do people do this? I was more worried about, am I gonna live? Am I gonna make it out of here? What's gonna happen? Are the cops gonna come?
And then 12 minutes after those first 911 calls from the bowling alley, 7:08 p.m., the calls to 911, gunfire at a second location.
At about 7:08 p.m., the communications center received multiple 911 calls about an active shooter inside of a Schmenge's Billiards.
This time, Schmenge's Bar and Grill, just 4 miles from that bowling alley. 8 people killed inside, 1 person killed outside. Less than an hour later, 8:06 p.m., the sheriff's office releasing these chilling images of the suspect. Tonight, identified as 40-year-old Robert Card. Sources say Card is a U.S. Army reservist. A local law enforcement bulletin describing him as a certified firearms instructor. Authorities concerned the suspect's tactical knowledge, making him an even greater threat. The images showing him entering that bowling alley, his AK-47 style rifle raised to his shoulder, aiming his weapon. Nearly 2 hours later, 9:56 p.m., the suspect's white Subaru found with the doors open at a boat landing in Lisbon, Maine, about 8 miles from those 2 Lewiston locations.
He should be considered armed and dangerous. Based on our investigation, we believe this is someone that should not be approached.
In the overnight hours and all day today, the all-out search for the suspect. The signs in so many communities here, shelter in place. Helicopters searching overhead, aircraft with infrared cameras. The suspect now wanted tonight on multiple counts of murder.
Currently, there is an arrest warrant for 8 counts of murder for Mr. Card. And the reason it's 8 counts because 10 people have not yet been identified. As those people are identified, the counts will probably go to the total of 18.
The medical teams racing into action. Ambulances rushing to the scene, loading victims, hospitals inundated. 100 off-duty medical staff racing in to help. Outside, police guarding the entrance.
We had a first patient arrive at 7:24 p.m. and over the next 45 minutes, we received a total of 14 patients. 8 of those patients were admitted to our hospital. 3 of those patients are deceased.
From her hospital bed today, Jennifer Zanka telling us she was having dinner with friends at Schmenge's Bar and Grill when the shooting began at that second location.
When I turned around, we all turned around and realized what was happening. We dropped to the ground. And that's when I think I was shot in the arm.
She'd been shot, but this retired nurse still escaped through the back door.
I kept my hand on my arm like a tourniquet because it was bleeding pretty heavily. And I went to hide behind the dumpster, there was another gentleman there. But I knew I needed to get help.
Rushed to the hospital, a doctor she used to work with now operating on her.
I was one of the lucky ones. If the bullet had been in either direction, I definitely would not have survived.
She knows she survived while 18 others did not. This was the post on Facebook just today. A wife asking about her husband who worked at that bar and grill. Tracy Walker writing about her husband Joseph. Please pray. I haven't heard anything about my husband. He was at Schmenge's. Tonight, after waiting 14 hours for word, the family learned he was killed. His father, Leroy Walker, describes the emptiness.
Your whole body, everything goes out of you. Your heart goes flip-flop, and your gut, it feels like there's a vice in you. Your head can't take it, and you just feel like you're going to blow up. That's what you feel like, or blow out. I'm not sure which way, but you got no legs. Your mind can't. You're thinking, but you're not knowing what you're thinking. You don't even know where you're going. Yeah, it's an empty. It's just hard. I don't know how. Some people I've listened to people try to explain when something happens in these shootouts and stuff. I don't know how they do it. I can't explain it. Tell you the truth, I can't. I can tell you though, it's empty. It's empty. Mm-hmm. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
I'm sorry.
Well, we'll have to just wait and see, I guess.
Leroy is a local councilman here. He says state police told the family that his son was a hero who grabbed a knife behind that bar to try to stop the gunman, but that he was killed. Leroy's family showed us the article when his son was a hero back in high school, helping to stop a thief at a local jewelry store. His father was not surprised to learn that his son tried to help again. He says he'll miss the visits from his son after he would finish work. Those visits at night when he got off shift, you'll miss those most.
Kill me.
Yeah,
gonna kill me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only other thing is the other poor people that are out there doing the same thing as I'm doing right now, having no place to really go, or feel like you got a place to go. It's just emptiness. I feel so sorry for them too.
You know, it says a lot about this community that heartbroken father, even with his own pain tonight, is thinking about all of the other families here feeling that same emptiness, that same pain. As I've mentioned here, this manhunt underway at this hour, and just before we came on tonight, officers actually surrounding a home that they say has been linked to the suspect. Explosions could be heard for a time. In fact, multiple locations have now been checked, with hundreds of officers spreading out across the region. Families tonight told to stay inside, and ABC's Whit Johnson with late reporting here on this most recent location in this growing manhunt tonight.
Tonight, with accused mass shooter Robert Card still at large, the FBI swarming a home linked to him just after 7 p.m., calling his name out over a loudspeaker. Hours earlier, loud explosions could be heard coming from the area. The activity comes as more than 350 law enforcement personnel, ATF, U.S. Marshals, and police from multiple states scour the area, with families told to shelter in place, stay in their homes, and lock their vehicles.
Multiple cities shuttering all public buildings, schools, and many businesses. Overnight, just miles from the murders, police swarming the town of Lisbon, finding that white Subaru and a firearm inside. Lisbon's police chief fielding a flood of possible tips.
We've had everything from people calling about, noises in the basement, noises in the woods, suspicious people, gunshots, all night long since the incident in Lewiston.
And David, this is still very much an active scene at this property connected to the suspect. Those loudspeaker commands have died down, but authorities still have the home surrounded as the search continues and this community remains on lockdown. David.
All right, Whit Johnson here in Lewiston, Maine with us here tonight. Whit, thank you. We are also learning more about the suspect tonight and the time he spent at that mental health facility for 2 weeks just this past summer. Tonight, the warning sign. So let's get right to it. Our Chief Justice Correspondent, Pierre Thomas. Pierre, what more have you learned about the suspect and his time at that mental health facility?
David, this past summer, military officials at Camp Smith training site just north of New York City became increasingly concerned about the mental health of Army Reservist Robert Card. In July, Card was acting, quote, erratically. A source telling ABC News he was threatening other soldiers with violence. A law enforcement bulletin described to ABC News portrays Card as hearing voices and talking about going to, quote, shoot up a military site in Saco, Maine. Card was ordered to go to the Keller Army Community Hospital near West Point, where he stayed for 2 weeks. Tonight, the critical question: how did someone in such a mental health crisis maintain access to a high-capacity rifle? David?
A real question that has to be answered in these weeks ahead. Pierre Thomas with us tonight. Pierre, thank you. And sadly, at every one of these mass shootings, we must tell the stories of the lives lost. The families dealing with immeasurable pain. Tonight, the names and faces of the victims now emerging. The youth bowling coach, a loving husband and grandfather who tried to protect the children, the mother working part-time at the bowling alley, and her cousin who witnessed it all. ABC's Linsey Davis here in Maine tonight.
Tonight, we're learning about some of the lives lost in the rampage from their heartbroken families. 76-year-old Bob Violet, a youth bowling coach who reportedly died trying to protect the children in his care. Bob's family described him to the Portland Press-Herald as a doting husband who took great care to make sure his wife never missed her medication, setting timers on his phone. And they say Bob cherished the time spent with his grandchildren, especially their weekly bowling nights. 53-year-old mother Tricia Aslin was the only woman killed at the bowling alley where she worked. When the gunfire erupted, she ran to call 911 and was shot. Tricia's cousin Tammy was at the bowling alley too with her daughter.
I saw someone get shot and I saw blood splatter everywhere and they just fell off their chair.
The entire family racked with grief. Tell us about your cousin.
She was the most fun person. She was always happy-go-lucky, and I just feel devastated for the loss of her family.
The mother who was lost here, you spoke with her cousin today. You also spoke with that mother's brother, also grieving tonight.
The brother described Tricia as the rock of the family. And of course, David, we're just learning more information about some of the other victims. Among them, at least 2 men who were members of a group of deaf adults who were at Schmenge's, that restaurant, having a good time playing cornhole.
It's the family hour here in this community. Linsey, so much pain here. Thank you for being here as well. And there's a lot of other news we have to get to here tonight because there's been a major development in Israel's war with Hamas. The Israeli military sending tanks for a time into Gaza. ABC's Matt Gutman from Tel Aviv tonight.
Tonight, Israel claiming it conducted its largest ground incursion into the Gaza Strip since the October 7th terror attack by Hamas. Israel releasing infrared video showing bulldozers near a damaged border fence in northern Gaza, a column of tanks moving in, opening fire, hitting multiple targets. The Israeli military calling it a targeted raid, claiming it destroyed Hamas infrastructure, saying it was preparing for the next stages of combat.
This was an early, small, tactical incursion into the Gaza Strip. This is us preparing the battlefield for future operations.
And Israel today launching devastating new airstrikes on southern Gaza, claiming it targeted Hamas. Toppling a high-rise, this wailing baby pulled out alive, encrusted in dust. David, there are urgent talks being spearheaded by Qatar to gain the release of a large number of hostages. And the fear among the hostage families is that once that ground invasion begins, their loved ones could be lost. David.
Matt Gutman in Tel Aviv tonight. Matt, thank you. This evening, the Pentagon says a Chinese fighter jet nearly collided with an American B-52 bomber over the South China Sea. The nighttime incident playing out on Tuesday. They say showing the Chinese jet flying at excessive speed, in their words, coming within just 10 feet. The U.S. military says putting both aircraft at risk. The Pentagon citing a pattern of risky behavior by the Chinese military against U.S. aircraft. When we come back here tonight, the alleged intruder at the home of presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy and his wife, actress Cheryl Hines, both home at the time. And this storm across several states tonight, the winter weather alerts at this hour, in some places, significant snow in a moment. Tonight, we're learning more about an alleged intruder arrested twice in the same day at the Los Angeles home of presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy. A private security taking him down in the backyard. The suspect caught yesterday morning, we're told, then returning hours later. Kennedy and his wife, actress Cheryl Hines, both home at the time. The intruder did not have contact with either of them. When we come back here, the storms we're tracking at this hour, heavy snow, nearly 2 feet in some areas, several states tonight under winter weather alerts. Tonight, the winter weather alerts from Idaho to Minnesota. Heavy snow already in several states, nearly 20 inches of snow in Montana. Heavy rain and possible flooding moving from Dallas to Cincinnati. We're tracking it through Sunday. When we come back here, the images that said so much here today in a moment. A final note before we go tonight, we can hear the choppers in the air. This manhunt continues, and the strength here in this community, even amid the pain. Families heeding the warnings tonight. Downtown Main Street resembling a ghost town. An art teacher posting 100 heart-shaped messages reading, "To my city, to my friends." And a sign with a message for us all: let's be kinder to each other, Lewiston strong. Thank you for watching. I'm David Muir. Good night.
When it matters most, America turns to David Muir and ABC's World News Tonight.